One of the things that I've tended to do in my own writing, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, it's just I've noticed looking back on it, this is what I do, is that the things that I think that take me the longest to figure out or the hardest for me to understand or that I really, really have to work on, those are the ones that I tend to gravitate to. And then once I sort of get something that I think makes sense, or it's really obvious to me that I think that's right, I sort of just write a paragraph or two about it and go on to the next thing, because I know somebody's going to figure that one out. But the other things that are really hard to figure out now are ones I tend to dwell on. I have Judeo-Christianity running through my DNA. I mean, if you're born a Westerner, you grow up in it. What you don't know is what's Neo-Confucianism like, and what's Taoism like, and what's Vedanta. What was Shankara really saying? What was Nagarjuna saying, and so on. So it was always important for me to basically try to, as much as an outsider can, understand as many of those systems. Because I knew I could read Eckhart and, have an easier go of that, or Maimonides and so on. And so that's what I've tended to do. And in a sense, I would still do it that way, because what's really happened now is that we can work with, and we are working with, I think the greatest contemplatives in the Jewish and Christian tradition are now part of Inigo University. So Father Thomas Keating, who has started more centers on contemplative prayer than any present living Christian, is now making Inigo University the main outlet for his centering prayer organization. And Father Thomas has been using my stuff for 20 years. I mean, when I first went to Snowmass Monastery, Treya took me there, and he had a whole shelf of my books, and I thought, God, what an enlightened person. And this is a very self-serving story, but I have to tell you it because it's just made me feel so good. The head abbot at the time was Father Michael Abdo, and he's just one of our favorite people in the world. And he, as a matter of fact, was one of the people that married Treya and I. So when Treya and I, when I proposed to her and we decided to get married, she sent him a box of my books, and then she sent him a letter, and saying we were getting married. So he opened the box of books first, and he said, "Oh, I see Treya has discovered my favorite writer." And then he looked, "Oh, I see she's marrying my favorite writer." I just love that story. Back when I had an ego, I'd tell it to anybody that could listen. So, and then for Jewish and Kabbalah in particular, and I have studied them enormously. It's just, to me, it's it's easier than the others, and particularly on Luria and the great Kabbalah systems and Hasidim. But obviously, Rabbi Zalman Schachter is one of the world's really great respected, and he was a founding member of Integral Institute, and is also going to be part of our Integral Kabbalah domain. And Moshe Idel is probably the world's leading scholar of Kabbalah, and his main succeeding student is Rabbi Mark Gaffney. And Gaffney is actually heading the Integral Kabbalah domain and is writing a book on Integral Kabbalah. Now, when I say Integral Kabbalah, I mean Aqual Kabbalah. So he's writing an all-quadrant, all-level, all-line reinterpretation of Kabbalah. And Shambhala is going to publish it, and I'm going to write a foreword for it. So it's that kind of thing that can happen, but I had to go the far way around in order for that. But it's a really important point. In 1983, I wrote a book called The Sociable God. And actually, we're bringing out like a third edition of it or something very recently, which I wrote a very large, a 40-page preface to it, sort of updating where we were. But in it, I said, and I was a very intensely practicing Buddhist at the time, and all of my friends are Buddhists. But I said, Buddhism is not going to be the vehicle that transforms the West. It's got to come from within the Judeo-Christian tradition, only because there's so much of it. And then Newsweek does a story on Buddhism, and which I still think really is, if you have to pick one system, it's a wonderfully profound and deep system. It's very hard to find something that's more complete. Although, again, I think any tradition, you can get everything you need to get where you need to be. Maybe 100,000 Americans were practicing Buddhists. That's just frightening because, there are like 300 million of that other religion out there. But that's not the point. The point is, what's the depth of consciousness that any religion allows? And we tend to have a slanted view. We tend to think because the great contemplative Buddhists and Hindus and Taoists come over here, that everybody over there is contemplative. No, less than 1% over there is contemplative as well as that. So most of the people brought up on Buddhism or Hinduism, it's exoteric. It's, Buddha loves me, this I know, for the sutra tells me so. Da, da, da. And when you die, you're going to go to Tetsuga heaven. And it's shit. Billy Graham could buy this stuff if you change the spelling. So, because blue meme is blue meme everywhere. And the ones who have always transcended have been precious rare in any tradition. It's just some of the traditions have really been kept alive, and some have not very well. So we want to, of course, in a sense, work with all of them. We want the Hindu practice and the Taoist practice and the Buddhist practice to remain what it is. We don't want Vipassana to change. There's no way to, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's just, it's got to be put in an integral context now, because there's no way to understand how it fits with all these other things, all these other stages, and with systems theory and quantum mechanics and all of that. So what we're trying to do through Integral University is take a lot of these, and this is why Father Thomas and Zalman and these people are coming and working with us. Take the traditions, fit them in a four-quadrant, all-level, all-line framework, and then we call it freeing them by limiting them. And that sort of sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it's not. It's a way of saying, this is what you specialize in. This upper left quadrant, you take the entire great chain of being, body, mind, soul, and spirit, and it goes in the upper left quadrant, and it doesn't cover the other quadrants. And as soon as the contemplative realizes that, they can say, I specialize in this component, and they bring invaluable knowledge that you can't get anyplace else. But there's nothing in the sutras about serotonin or dopamine or any of the assistance. You just can't find that in the traditions. You can't find anything about the Clare Graves stages or Carol Gilligan stuff. So we've got to supplement. Supplement means supplement. It doesn't mean get rid of. Because what they do brilliantly. And the unfortunate thing is because there's not an obvious way of how that fits into the modern and postmodern world, the modern and postmodern world is throwing it out. And that's the disaster. So we say if you limit your claims and say this is what we're doing, then it frees you to focus on what you're doing, and then the world will start to listen to you.